never imagined that the woman I built my life with would betray me in the worst way possible. But the moment I realized she had tricked me into signing away everything I owned, something inside me snapped. What happens when the one you trust most becomes your greatest enemy? How do you fight back when you've already lost? This isn't just a story of heartbreak. It's a story of calculated revenge, of turning the tables when the deck is stacked against you. Stick around, because this is one twist-filled ride you won't want to miss. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I used to believe that trust was the foundation of every strong marriage, that no matter how difficult things got, as long as two people had faith in each other, they could weather any storm. But trust is just a weapon in the hands of the wrong person, and my wife, Lena, was an expert at wielding it. It started subtly. At first, it was the late nights at work, the sudden protectiveness over her phone, the way she'd smile at texts she refused to let me see. I ignored the signs, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. After all, she was my wife, the woman I had vowed to love and cherish, the woman who had stood beside me when I'd built my business from the ground up. Lena wasn't just beautiful. She was sharp, charming, and persuasive. When she wanted something, she knew exactly how to get it, and that's what made her dangerous. One evening, she came home beaming with excitement. "I was thinking," she said, wrapping her arms around me, "we've been through so much together. Maybe it's time to do something special? Renew our vows?" I looked into her eyes, those deep, dark eyes that had once held so much love for me. And just like that, my suspicion melted away. Maybe I was overthinking things. "That sounds perfect," I said, kissing her forehead. Over the next few weeks, Lena went out of her way to plan our second wedding. She was affectionate, present, and even more attentive than usual. It felt like we were reconnecting. One evening, she slid a stack of papers in front of me. "Legal stuff," she said with a casual shrug. "It's just some property documentation and prenup revisions, just in case, to keep things clean." I skimmed through it, barely glancing at the fine print. Why would I doubt her? I had nothing to hide, nothing to protect myself from. She was my wife. So I signed. And just like that, I had unknowingly signed my own betrayal. The first real punch to my gut came a few days later. A friend, Daniel, called me out of the blue. "Hey man, I don't mean to pry, but are you sure about the papers you signed?" Confused, I asked him what he meant. "Must look into it, trust me." My stomach tightened. That night, I pulled out the documents and read every single line carefully for the first time. My heart stopped. Buried within legal jargon and unrelated clauses were divorce papers, signed, dated, legally binding. Lena had tricked me into signing our marriage away. I felt like an idiot. How could I have been so blind? She had played me perfectly, knowing I would never question her intentions. But the real betrayal wasn't just the papers. It was what they entailed. She was taking everything. The house, the business I built, half my assets, everything. I gripped the papers, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was a calculated, premeditated attack. She had never planned to stay. She had been orchestrating this for months, slowly cutting me out of my own life while I smiled like a fool, believing in her lies. But why? And more importantly, who was she doing this for? I needed answers, and I needed them fast. Ending hook for Act 1. I couldn't let her win. I wouldn't. The woman I loved had turned into my enemy, but she had underestimated one thing. I don't lose. The affair unfolds. I sat in my home office, staring at the divorce papers I had unknowingly signed. My heartbeat pounded against my rib cage, my breath slow and controlled, but my mind was anything but. Lena had played me, deceived me in a way I never thought possible. But anger wouldn't solve this. I needed answers. I needed proof. That night, I decided to test her. When she came home, I acted normal, like nothing had changed. I greeted her with a soft kiss on the cheek, pretending to be the same clueless husband she thought I was. "Hey babe, how was your day?" I asked, carefully studying her expression. She smiled, but there was something about it that felt off, forced, practiced. "Exhausting," she sighed, tossing her bag onto the couch. "Meetings all day, and then Melissa dragged me out for dinner. I barely had time to breathe." Melissa, a name she often used as a cover when she didn't want me asking questions. I just nodded. "That's rough. You should relax. Maybe a movie?" She hesitated. I saw the flicker of hesitation before she covered it with another easy smile. "Rain check? I'm exhausted. I just want to shower and go to bed." I forced a chuckle. "Yeah, of course." But my gut told me she was lying. So I waited, pretended to go to bed, but as soon as she was asleep, I took her phone. Passcode protected, of course. But she wasn't careful enough. A few weeks ago, I had caught a glimpse of her entering her PIN, not thinking much of it. Now, I punched in the numbers. Unlocked. My heart pounded as I scrolled through her messages. And then I found it. A chat with someone named C. No last name, just an initial. I opened it. The texts were deleted, but a few messages remained. P. "You looked stunning tonight. Could barely keep my hands off you." "Lena, I wanted more. I hate that we have to be careful." "Seeing, he won't see it coming." I clenched my fists, rage burning through my veins. This wasn't just an affair. This was a full-blown betrayal. Who the hell was C? I took screenshots and sent them to my own phone before carefully placing hers back where I found it. Then I made a decision. I needed to catch her in the act, investigating the affair. The next morning, I played dumb, kissed her goodbye, told her to have a great day. Then I followed her. I had never done anything like this before, never thought I'd have to, but as I trailed her car through the city, my stomach twisted in knots. She wasn't going to work. Instead, she pulled into a high-end hotel parking lot, the kind of place we used to go to for anniversaries. My grip tightened on the steering wheel as I watched her get out of the car, smoothing down her dress, checking her reflection in the mirror. She looked good, too good for a simple business meeting. Then he stepped out of the hotel entrance. See, my stomach dropped. I knew him. It was Caleb, my business partner, my so-called friend. They greeted each other like lovers. A lingering kiss, her hands resting on his chest as he whispered something into her ear. Everything inside me shattered. I should have stormed out, should have confronted them right then and there, but something stopped me. A better idea. If I played this right, I wouldn't just expose them. I'd destroy them. The plan begins. I drove away, my mind working at full speed. Lena wasn't just cheating. She was cheating with a man who had access to my business, my financials, my future. That meant this wasn't just personal, it was a hostile takeover. That night, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator, gathering evidence. For the next week, I let them believe they were safe. I let Lena kiss me in the morning, let her fake her smiles, let her sneak out at night thinking I was too stupid to notice. But every move she made was being tracked. Every meeting, every hotel visit, every whispered phone call. And it wasn't just Caleb. Lena had been draining our accounts, moving money into a private fund, setting herself up for a clean break. But what she didn't know was that I had already contacted my lawyer. And I had already started the process to freeze our joint assets. She wanted to take everything, not anymore. The final piece of the puzzle. The last thing I needed was a recording, something undeniable. So I set a trap. One evening, I told Lena I'd be out of town for work, left the house, parked my car 2 blocks away, and walked back just in time to see her let Caleb inside. I recorded everything. The kisses, the whispered plotting, the way she laughed about how easy it was to manipulate me. Lena, he never saw it coming. He's too trusting, too soft. Caleb, by the time he realizes, you'll have everything. I had to grip my phone so tightly I thought I'd break it. Soft, trusting, not anymore. That night I didn't sleep. I waited, planned, and when the time was right, I turned the tables. The perfect setup. The next morning I acted normal, greeted her with a smile, let her think she had won. Then I told her, let's go out tonight, a fancy dinner, just us. She smiled, smug, clueless. She had no idea I had invited Caleb's wife to the same restaurant. No idea I had printed out every piece of evidence, the texts, the hotel bills, the bank transfers. No idea that when we sat down at dinner, she'd look up to see Caleb's wife standing over her shoulder, holding the photos and shaking hands. And when Lena's eyes went wide, when she started stammering, when Caleb turned pale, that was when I leaned in and whispered, "You should have been more careful, sweetheart." Lena's laughter filled the restaurant, light and sweet as she twirled the stem of her wine glass between her fingers. She had no idea what was coming. She thought tonight was another celebration of her so-called victory, a toast to her perfect deception. Across from her, I smiled, playing my part. Every move, every glance, every carefully chosen word was calculated. I let her think she was still in control, that I was the same gullible husband she had fooled before. In my pocket, my phone vibrated. Right on time. I didn't even need to look, they were here. Lena sipped her wine, crossing her legs under the table. "I have to admit," she purred, "this was a great idea. We haven't done this in so long." I tilted my head, pretending to admire her. "I know, I've been thinking a lot about us lately." Her smile widened, but there was something behind it, a flicker of guilt, or maybe she was just nervous that her lies were catching up to her. "About what?" she asked, feigning curiosity. "Everything." I leaned forward, my fingers tracing the rim of my glass. "About what's important. About the future." Her expression shifted ever so slightly. She was gauging me, trying to figure out if I knew anything. But before she could dig deeper, a shadow passed behind her. I saw Caleb's wife first. She was pale, her lips pressed into a tight line as she clutched the manila envelope in her trembling hands. She had seen everything. And now she knew. Lena didn't notice her at first. She was too busy basking in her own illusion, too busy believing she had already won. Then Caleb appeared. He froze mid-step, his face draining of color the second he saw his wife. His eyes darted between me and Lena, realization dawning. I watched it all unfold in slow motion. Lena's gaze followed mine. She turned, saw them, and in that instant, her entire world shattered. The blood drained from her face. Her breath caught in her throat. Her fingers clenched the tablecloth as if she could physically hold on to control. But it was too late. Caleb's wife dropped the envelope onto the table. The contents spilled out. Photographs, screenshots, transaction records, hotel receipt. Lena's hands shook as she reached for them. I leaned back in my chair, watching her unravel. "Evidence," I said smoothly. "You've been busy, sweetheart." Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with panic. "You set me up." I shrugged. "I simply did what you did, played the game. I just played it better." Caleb tried to reach for his wife's hand, but she pulled away, her voice shaking. How long? She didn't look at Lena. She didn't look at Caleb. She looked at me, because she already knew they wouldn't tell the truth. I exhaled, glancing at Lena. 6 months, maybe longer, hard to say when it started, but it definitely didn't stop. Caleb swore under his breath, running a hand down his face. It's not what it looks like. Lena tried to stand, but I reached across the table, my hand wrapping around her wrist. She did. I could see it now, the way she was scrambling, trying to find a way out, trying to figure out if she could still manipulate the situation. But there was no escape. The restaurant had gone quiet. A few nearby tables were pretending not to watch, but I could feel the weight of their eyes. Lena's breath was coming faster now. We can talk about this at home. We don't have to do this here. I arched a brow. Oh, but we do. Because you weren't just cheating on me, Lena. You were planning to take everything from me. You wanted me blind, broke, and discarded. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She knew it was true. Caleb finally found his voice, but it was weak, desperate. Come on, man. This is between us. We can handle this privately. I let out a soft chuckle, shaking my head. See, that's where you're wrong. This isn't just between us. It's between you, your wife, your employees, and the board of directors. Caleb stiffened. The board? I smiled. Oh, didn't I mention? I sent them the financial records. You remember those accounts Lena was funneling money into? They were tied to your name too, so technically this isn't just an affair, it's fraud. Lena went pale. You wouldn't. I leaned in. I already did. Caleb's wife inhaled sharply, stepping back from the table like she couldn't stand to be near him. Caleb reached for her again, but she shoved him away. Don't, she whispered. Just don't. Lena turned to me now, desperation in her eyes. Baby, listen to me. I scoffed. Don't. You lost the right to call me that. Tears welled up in her eyes. For a second, I almost believed they were real, almost believed that she actually regretted what she had done. Then I saw it, the flicker of calculation behind her gaze. She wasn't sorry. She was just sorry she got caught. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You tricked me into signing divorce papers, but now I'm turning the tables. Lena's breath hit. What? I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. It means you get nothing. No house, no business, no hidden funds. I had the documents rewritten. I filed them this morning. The divorce is final, and, thanks to a little legal loophole, everything is mine. She gasped. You can't do that. I grinned. I already did. Caleb's wife exhaled slowly, her voice filled with quiet relief. And he'll lose everything too, won't he? I nodded. Oh yeah, the board's meeting tomorrow to discuss his financial misconduct. I'd say he'll be unemployed before lunchtime. Caleb's hand curled into fists, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. Lena was trembling now. Please, she whispered, we can fix this. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I picked up my drink, took a slow sip, and set it back down. Now, Lena, you can fix this. I stood up, buttoning my jacket. Good luck with that. As I walked away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could already hear the chaos unfolding behind me. The cold night air felt different as I stepped out of the restaurant, crisp, clear, and refreshing, like breathing for the first time in months. Behind me, chaos unraveled. Lena's shrill voice, Caleb's desperate explanations, the hushed murmurs of other diners trying to absorb the spectacle unfolding before them. I had done it. I had turned the tables. For the first time since discovering her betrayal, I felt something other than rage. Satisfaction. Not because I had humiliated her, but because I had taken back control. She had thought I was weak. She had thought she had won. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I reached my car and leaned against the hood, watching as Caleb stormed out of the restaurant first, his face tight with fury and humiliation. His wife followed, wiping away tears, keeping her distance from him. Lena was next. She ran out after me, her heels clacking against the pavement, eyes wild with panic. "Wait," she called out, rushing toward me. I didn't move, didn't react. I just watched her, silent, letting her unravel. She stumbled to a stop in front of me, chest rising and falling in quick, uneven breaths. "Please," her voice cracked. "We need to talk." I cocked my head, studying her. She looked unhinged. Gone was the confident, manipulative woman who had spent months plotting against me. In her place was someone who had lost everything. I should have felt sympathy. I didn't. "Talk?" I said, my tone calm. "Like how you talked to Caleb? Or how you talked to your lawyer behind my back?" She flinched. "That's not fair." I let out a sharp laugh. "Fair?" I took a step closer, towering over her. "You tricked me into signing away my life. You stole from me, you betrayed me, and now that you've lost, you want to talk about fair?" She swallowed, her hands trembling. "I never meant to hurt you." That was it. That was the moment my restraint snapped. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "You never meant to hurt me?" My voice was dangerously low. "You didn't just cheat, Lena. You planned to ruin me. You played me like a fool, and you would have walked away without a second thought if I hadn't caught you." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Because we both knew it was true. She hadn't cared about me. She had cared about what she could take, how easily she could discard me. But now she was the one discarded. "What do you want, Lena?" I asked, arms crossed. Her shoulders slumped. "A second chance?" I almost laughed. "You're joking." "No." She reached for me, but I stepped back, and she visibly panicked. "Listen, I made a mistake. I got caught up in something I shouldn't have. But I love you, I swear I do. We can fix this. We can go back to how things were." I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. There is no we anymore. Tears pooled in her eyes. "Please, don't do this." For a brief moment, I let myself remember the woman I had married, the life we had built together. But then I remembered who she had become. And just like that, any remnants of love I had for her were gone. "Goodbye, Lena." I turned, unlocking my car. Her voice rose in desperation. "If you leave, I have nothing." I paused, turned back, and smiled. "That's exactly what you deserve." I got into the car and drove off, leaving her behind. Leaving it all behind. I thought that was the end of it. I thought she'd accept her loss. I was wrong. 3 days later, she showed up at my house. She was standing on my porch when I pulled into the driveway, her arms crossed, face pale. I sighed, stepping out of the car. "What now?" "You're not answering my calls," she said flatly. "I have nothing to say to you." She clenched her jaw. "I'm not leaving until you hear me out." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I pushed the door open and walked inside. She followed. It was strange having her back in the house. This was once our home. Now it felt like she didn't belong here. "To make it quick," I said, leaning against the counter. She took a deep breath. "I know you hate me, I get it. But I've lost everything. The money, the house, Caleb." "He dumped you?" I cut in, raising a brow. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not the point." "Oh, I think it is." I let out a soft chuckle. "Let me guess. Once you were no longer useful, he walked away." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I shook my head. "You betrayed the wrong people, Lena. You thought you were playing the game, but you got played." Her fists clenched. "I didn't come here for you to gloat." "Then why are you here?" She hesitated. And then she said something that almost made me laugh. I want to try again. I stared at her. Then I did laugh. Loud, genuine, because she was insane. Do you seriously think I would take you back? Her eyes darkened. We were good together. We were. I nodded. Before you threw it all away. She took a step closer. We can fix this. I tilted my head. You mean, now that you have nothing, you want to come crawling back? You want to pretend none of it happened? She was silent, because she knew I was right. Get out, Lena. Her breath caught. Out. Her lip quivered, but she nodded, turning toward the door. Before she left, she looked at me one last time. You'll regret this. I smiled. No, I won't. And this time when she walked out of my life, I let her go. For good. A week later, I heard she had left town. No money, no job, no allies. She had burned every bridge. I thought about her for a moment, then shrugged. She was no longer my problem. As for me, I was free. For the first time in a long time, I was truly free. And it felt damn good. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in years. It was strange, this newfound sense of peace, the absence of anger, betrayal, or even the lingering sting of loss. Lena was gone, not just from my home, but from my life, my thoughts, my future. For so long she had taken up space in my mind, occupying every corner like a shadow that refused to fade. But now she was nothing, just a chapter of my past, a lesson I had learned the hard way. I made myself a cup of coffee and stood by the kitchen window, watching the world move on. The morning sun was rising, casting golden hues over the streets, the rooftops, the trees. Life didn't stop for anyone, and neither would I. A part of me had expected to feel empty. After all, I had spent years building a life with Lena, years believing in something that had turned out to be a lie. But instead of emptiness, I felt something different. Relief. I had survived. Not just the heartbreak, not just the betrayal, but the worst of it, the doubt, the humiliation, the feeling of being powerless. I had taken back control. I sipped my coffee, letting its warmth settle inside me. No more looking over my shoulder, no more wondering what she was hiding, no more questioning if I was enough. I was enough, I always had been. She had just been too blind to see it. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. For a brief second, an irrational thought crossed my mind. Lena. Maybe she had come back, one last desperate attempt to manipulate her way into my life again. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her. It was Daniel, my friend, my colleague, the one who had warned me in the first place, the man who had given me the first clue that my wife was a liar, a cheater, a fraud. "Morning," he said, holding up a bag of pastries and a coffee. "Figured you could use a decent breakfast." I smirked, stepping aside to let him in. "You just wanted an excuse to eat my food, didn't you?" "Obviously." He set the bag down, grabbing a croissant. "So, how's it feel?" I knew what he was asking. How does it feel to win, to walk away, to finally be free? I took another sip of coffee before answering. "It feels good, different, like I can breathe." Daniel nodded, chewing thoughtfully. "She's really gone?" "Yeah." I leaned against the counter. "Left town, from what I heard. Probably looking for her next victim." He snorted. "Good riddance." I chuckled. "You're telling me." For a moment, we just stood there, eating in silence. It was nice, simple, uncomplicated, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions I had been drowning in just days ago. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "So what's next for you?" It was a good question, one I had been asking myself ever since the dust settled. What now? I'd spent so much time focused on Lena, on exposing her, outsmarting her, making sure she didn't win. But now that it was over, now that I had won, what came next? I exhaled, staring at the floor for a moment. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I get to decide for myself. Daniel grinned. That's the best part. And he was right. For years, my life had revolved around a woman who never truly loved me. I had built my world around her, sacrificing parts of myself in the name of keeping us together. But now there was no us. There was just me. And that was enough. That afternoon, I found myself at my office, staring out the window. The city stretched out before me, full of possibilities. For the first time, I allowed myself to dream about the future. Not the future I had once envisioned with Lena, but something new, something entirely my own. Maybe I would expand the business. Maybe I'd finally take that trip I had been putting off. Maybe I'd focus on myself for a while, learn to enjoy life without the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. I could do anything. Because I was free. The thought made me smile. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I truly smiled. And as I turned away from the window, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. I never believed in fate. Never thought life had some grand plan or that things happened for a reason. But standing here now, staring at the world ahead of me, I couldn't deny that sometimes, just sometimes, loss was exactly what you needed to find yourself. Lena was gone, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. She no longer held any power over me. I had won, not just the battle, but the war. And for the first time in a long time, I was at peace. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding. Not my business, not my finances. Those were already intact. I was rebuilding myself. The weight of betrayal had been lifted, and in its place was something new, something foreign, hope. I spent more time with friends. I took up hobbies I had abandoned over the years. I finally read the books gathering dust on my shelves, ran in the park instead of sitting at a desk all day, and learned to enjoy the quiet moments. For so long, my life had been a storm, chaotic, unpredictable, but now I had control again. I had clarity. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, sipping a whiskey and watching the sunset, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to answer. Hello? There was silence on the other end. Then, the voice I never thought I'd hear again. It's me? Lena. I exhaled slowly, swirling the whiskey in my glass. Why are you calling me? Another pause. I just needed to hear your voice. I let out a humorless chuckle. That's funny. You didn't seem to need me much when you were screwing my business partner and stealing my money. I made a mistake. I shook my head, staring out at the skyline. No, Lena, a mistake is forgetting to pick up milk at the store. What you did, that was calculated, cruel, and you did it without a second thought. She inhaled sharply, as if my words had physically struck her. I know I can't fix it. I know I don't deserve anything from you, but her voice wavered. I miss you. I closed my eyes for a second, letting the words settle. I knew what she wanted. Forgiveness. Closure. But she wasn't getting that from me. Because in truth, I didn't care anymore. Goodbye, Lena. And with that, I hung up. I deleted her number, blocked her for good measure. And as I sat there, taking another slow sip of whiskey, I realized something. For the first time in months, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't anything at all. Lena was just a ghost now, a whisper of the past, fading into nothing. And I was moving forward. A few weeks later, I found myself at a coffee shop, flipping through a business proposal when I heard a voice beside me. "You look different." I looked up. It was Daniel. I smirked, setting my papers aside. That a good thing or a bad thing? He shrugged, pulling out the chair across from me. "Depends, but you look lighter, like you're actually enjoying life again." I nodded, glancing around the cafe, taking in the warmth, the hum of conversation, the simple pleasure of being present. "I think I am." Daniel grinned. "Took you long enough?" I chuckled. "Yeah, well, better late than never." He leaned back in his chair. "So, what's next? You dating again? Finally taking that trip to Europe you always talked about?" I smirked, taking a sip of my coffee. "Maybe. Who knows? For the first time in a long time, I don't have a plan, and you know what?" Daniel raised a brow. "What?" I exhaled, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "It feels damn good. The past was behind me, the future was mine, and this time, no one was going to take it from me." I sat on the beach watching the waves roll in and out, the rhythmic sound of the tide filling the silence around me. The sky was painted in hues of gold and lavender, the sun melting into the horizon, casting a warm glow over the water. It was peaceful, serene. It had been months since everything had unfolded, months since I had walked away from Lena for good, and yet there were still moments like this, quiet, reflective moments, where I found myself thinking about the past, not with regret, not with anger, but with understanding. Time had a way of softening the sharp edges of pain. What once felt like an open wound had become a faded scar, a reminder of what I had endured, but not something that defined me. Lena was gone, and with her, so was the man I used to be. I had changed, not because of her betrayal, not because of the way she had tried to destroy me, but because I had survived it. For so long, I had allowed myself to be consumed by anger, by the need for revenge, by the desire to turn the tables on the woman who had wronged me. And in the end, I had done just that. I had outplayed her. I had won. But winning wasn't what set me free. Letting go is... I took a deep breath, inhaling the salty ocean air, letting it settle inside me. This was my new beginning. No more looking back, no more wondering what could have been. I had wasted enough time mourning a woman who never truly loved me. I had so much more ahead of me. A few feet away, Daniel called out, motioning toward the bonfire he had built, the flames flickering against the evening sky. "Come on, man, you're gonna get all moody sitting over there alone." I smirked, shaking my head as I stood, brushing the sand off my hands. He wasn't wrong. Daniel had been there through it all, offering advice, giving me space when I needed it, pushing me forward when I felt stuck. Now he was reminding me that life was meant to be lived. As I walked toward the fire, I realized something. I wasn't just letting go of Lena. I was letting go of the version of myself that had needed her. I didn't need her. I never did. I sat down beside Daniel, the warmth of the fire licking at my skin. A few other friends had gathered, laughter and conversation filling the night air. Someone passed me a beer, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel out of place. I belonged here, not in the past, not in the pain, here, in this moment. "So what's next?" Daniel asked, taking a sip of his drink. I stared into the flames, watching them dance and flicker. "I don't know," I admitted, and for once, that didn't scare me. Daniel grinned. "Good, means anything is possible." He was right. For the first time in years, my life was truly my own. The future was mine to create, mine to shape. No more deceit, no more betrayal, no more wasted time on someone who never deserved me. Just freedom. And that was enough. I lifted my beer, a silent toast to the road ahead. A road that, this time, I would walk alone. But that didn't mean I would be lonely. It meant I was finally free. The stars shined brighter than they ever had before. And as I looked up, I knew the best was yet to come. There was a time when I believed love was unbreakable, that trust, once given, was a bond stronger than anything else. But I learned the hard way that love can be a lie, and trust can be a weapon in the wrong hand. Lena had been my world, and in return I had been nothing more than a stepping stone in hers. She had played me, manipulated me, made me believe we were building something together while she was secretly dismantling everything I had worked for. It should have destroyed me, but it didn't, because I refused to let her betrayal define me. I could have let the anger consume me. I could have let the bitterness turn me into someone just as cruel, just as deceitful, but instead I chose to grow, to rebuild, to remind myself that I was more than the man she had tried to break. Losing Lena wasn't my downfall. It was my rebirth. For so long, I had allowed myself to be trapped in the illusion of what we were, what we had been. But looking back now, I see it clearly. She wasn't my forever. She was my lesson. And now I am free. Free from the lies, free from the past, free to create a future that belongs only to me. I'm not angry anymore. I don't even hate her. I just don't care. And that is the greatest victory of all.